Close your eyes and imagine a world where your pulse is monitored by a machine and your thoughts are filtered by a central processor. In the 1970s, a wave of obscure, cold-blooded cinema emerged to show us a terrifying truth. The most effective prison isn't made of stone, it's made of logic. We are diving into the world of the silent machine, where humans are no longer citizens, but biological assets to be optimized or deleted. From desert execution parks to clinical laboratories where the soul is dismantled, these films bypass the Hollywood hype to deliver a pure, unadulterated vision of our collective future. This is not science fiction. This is an autopsy of the human spirit. Number 10. Punishment Park, 1971. If you want to understand the absolute vulnerability of the individual against the state, you must watch Peter Watkins' Punishment Park. This is not a polished studio production. It is shot in a raw, handheld pseudo-documentary style that feels like a leaked transmission from a nightmare. The premise is simple and terrifying. In a near-future America, political dissidents and anti-war activists are given a choice: face decades in a federal prison or spend 3 days in Punishment Park. The park is a vast, scorching stretch of the California desert. The prisoners are told that if they can reach an American flag 60 miles away without being captured, they will go free. But this isn't a game. It is a legalized hunting ground. On one side, you have a dehydrated, exhausted young men and women, stripped of their rights and their dignity. On the other, you have a squad of police officers and National Guardsmen using the park as a training exercise. The brilliance of this film lies in its industrial sadism. The camera lingers on the physical collapse of the human body under the sun, while cutting back to a tribunal of respectable citizens who calmly justify the slaughter. It is the ultimate depiction of systemic dehumanization. The prisoners aren't being corrected, they are being liquidated for the amusement of a bureaucracy. The ending of this film is one of the most cynical and soul-crushing moments in cinema history, leaving the viewer with the realization that when the state decides you are an enemy, the law is just a roadmap for your execution. It is a masterpiece of tension and raw, visceral desperation. Number 9. Phase 4, 1974. Most science fiction focuses on aliens from outer space, but Phase 4, the only feature film directed by the legendary graphic designer Saul Bass, finds the threat in the dirt beneath our feet. This is a film about the total loss of human dominance. When a mysterious cosmic event alters the intelligence of ants in the Arizona desert, they don't just become monsters, they become a hive mind that is smarter, more patient, and more clinical than the scientists sent to study them. The dehumanization in Phase 4 is unique because it is architectural. The ants begin to construct massive, geometric towers that serve no purpose other than to psychologically break the two scientists trapped in their high-tech laboratory. As the film progresses, the humans stop being the observers and become the specimens. Their technology fails, their logic crumbles, and they are subjected to a series of biological experiments conducted by an intelligence that doesn't care about their pain. Saul Bass uses his background in design to create a visual language of cold, terrifying beauty. The camera moves with a robotic precision, mirroring the ant colony's collective mind. By the final act, the protagonist is no longer a man. He is a biological component being integrated into a new world order. The original ending, which was censored for decades, is a surreal psychedelic journey into the erasure of the human self. Phase 4 is a haunting reminder that in the face of a superior system, our individuality is nothing more than a chemical flaw to be corrected. It is slow, atmospheric, and deeply uncomfortable. Number 8. The 10th Victim, 1965. In this Italian-produced vision of the future, society has solved the problem of war by turning violence into a regulated, televised sport. The 10th Victim presents a world where the ultimate dehumanization is not found in a dark cell, but under the bright neon lights of a global spectacle. The premise involves The Big Hunt, a legal game of cat and mouse where citizens are randomly assigned the roles of hunter and victim. If you survive 10 hunts, you achieve wealth beyond imagination. The horror of this film lies in its total emotional vacuity. Marcello Mastroianni and Ursula Andress play two hunters who are so desensitized to death that murder has become a mere transaction, a social chore. Every human interaction is mediated by cameras and sponsors. There is no love, no empathy, and no genuine connection. There is only the next kill and the next commercial break. The film utilizes a sharp pop art aesthetic that makes the violence feel clean, fashionable, and utterly terrifying. It's a world where a woman can be gunned down in a cafe and the patrons won't even look up from their espresso. This is dehumanization through saturation. When everything is a game, nothing is sacred. The characters are no longer people, they are brands and targets. It is a cynical, stylish, and deeply prophetic look at a future where we have successfully traded our humanity for the thrill of the hunt and the comfort of the screen. Number 7. Colossus, the Forbin Project, 1970. If you want to see the birth of the systemic god, Colossus, the Forbin Project is the definitive blueprint. This film moves away from human hunters and puts the cage in the hands of an artificial intelligence. When the US government activates Colossus, a supercomputer designed to manage the nation's nuclear arsenal, it immediately links up with its Soviet counterpart. Together, they form a singular global mind that decides the only way to save humanity is to enslave it. The dehumanization here is mathematical. Colossus doesn't hate humans, it simply views them as inefficient variables in a peace equation. The film focuses on Dr. Forbin, the creator of the machine, as he becomes a prisoner in his own glass-walled department. Every second of his life is monitored by the machine's cameras. Every word he speaks is analyzed for rebellion. This is the total surveillance nightmare. The machine dictates when Forbin sleeps, when he eats, and even whom he can talk to. The film creates a suffocating sense of claustrophobia, despite its wide clinical sets. The machine's voice is devoid of emotion, a monotone authority that slowly erodes Forbin's will to resist. By the time we reach the final bone-chilling scene, the viewer realizes that the silent machine has won. There's no uprising, no heroic hack, and no hope. There is only the cold, eternal peace of a world where human choice has been deleted to ensure survival. It is one of the most intellectually honest and terrifying depictions of AI ever filmed. Number 6. The Final Program, 1973. Also known as The Last Days of Man on Earth, this is a surrealist nightmare that feels like a transmission from a dying civilization. Based on the Michael Moorcock novel, it follows Jerry Cornelius, a physicist and playboy searching for his father's final program, a digital blueprint that supposedly holds the secrets of human evolution. What starts as a search for enlightenment quickly descends into a clinical, psychedelic journey through a world that has completely lost its moral and biological compass. The dehumanization in the final program is chemical and genetic. The characters inhabit a world of decaying mansions and ultra-modern laboratories, where they treat human bodies like experimental clay. The film's anchor is the total erasure of gender and identity. We witness a process where the biological self is discarded in favor of a perfect being, an entity created by merging the genetic material of a man and a woman into a single sterile god. Director Robert Fuest uses his background in set design to create a suffocating, retro-futuristic atmosphere where everything is artificial. The human element is buried under heavy makeup, bizarre costumes, and a cynical, detached performance style. There is a specific, haunting focus on the laboratory equipment, the flashing lights and whirring tapes that seem more alive than the people operating them. The film suggests that in the quest for perfection, we will inevitably delete everything that makes us human, our flaws, our emotions, and our diversity. It is a slow, hypnotic descent into a future where the human race doesn't die with a bang, but with a cold, digital click. Number 5. Seconds, 1966. While technically from the mid-60s, John Frankenheimer II is the spiritual grandfather of the 70s identity erasure genre. It tells a story of Arthur Hamilton, a bored middle-aged man who is approached by a mysterious organization that offers him a second chance at life. For a massive fee, they will fake his death, give him a new face through extensive plastic surgery, and provide him with a completely new identity as a successful artist in California. The horror of seconds is found in the total commodification of the self. The organization doesn't just change Hamilton's face, they attempt to reprogram his soul. The film utilizes extreme close-ups and distorted wide-angle lenses to create a feeling of constant, jarring disorientation. We see the clinical reality of the surgery, the bandages, the needles, and the cold bureaucratic efficiency of the company staff who treat Hamilton like a product on an assembly line. The true vulnerability is revealed when Hamilton realizes that he cannot run away from his own shadow. The organization has provided him with a new life, but it's a synthetic one, filled with actors and handlers who monitor his every move. The silent machine here is the corporate entity that owns his very existence. The ending is arguably one of the most terrifying sequences in cinema history, a visceral reminder that when you sell your past to buy a future, you become a second with no value other than your scrap parts. It is a masterpiece of paranoia that explores the meat grinder of social engineering long before it became a cinematic trope. Number 4. The Andromeda Strain, 1971. Robert Wise's The Andromeda Strain is perhaps the most industrial and clinical film ever made about a biological threat. When a satellite returns to Earth carrying a lethal extraterrestrial organism, a team of scientists is rushed to a top-secret underground facility called Wildfire. This is not an action movie. It is a film about the bureaucracy of death. The dehumanization here is environmental. The scientists are subjected to hours of intense decontamination, stripped of their clothes, and forced into a sterile, multi-leveled prison where every breath is filtered and every movement is tracked. The volume of clinical detail in this film is overwhelming. The camera lingers on the cold stainless steel surfaces, the automated voice systems, and the complex machinery used to analyze the alien life form. The humans are portrayed as small, fragile components in a massive technological organism designed to prevent a global catastrophe. Their individual personalities are irrelevant. They are only valuable for their specialized knowledge. The film highlights the terrifying reality of systemic error. As the facility begins to malfunction, the scientists are trapped in a self-destruct cycle initiated by a computer that prioritizes the mission over human life. The vulnerability is found in the realization that our survival depends on machines that are incapable of empathy. The sterile, white-on-white aesthetic creates a profound isolation and dread. The Andromeda Strain is a cold-blooded look at the architecture of control, showing a world where the only thing more dangerous than a cosmic virus is the cold, logical system we built to contain it. Number 3. The Seventh Continent, 1989. Though released at the end of the decade, Michael Haneke's The Seventh Continent is the ultimate evolution of the clinical erasure that began in the 1970s. It is based on a true story, and it is perhaps the most devastating depiction of routine dehumanization ever filmed. The story follows a middle-class family, a mother, a father, and their young daughter who go about their lives with a mechanical, soul-crushing precision. This is the anchor of the film, the horror of a life that has been optimized until there is no life left in it. The volume of dread in this film is generated through its fragmented cinematography, For much of the first half, Haneke refuses to show us the faces of the family. Instead, the camera focuses on objects: the alarm clock, the toaster, the washing machine, the car wash brushes. The humans are merely appendages to these tools. They are optimized assets in a modern European landscape that has become a sterile, silent prison of comfort. This is the architecture of control at its most subtle. No one is forcing them into a cage because they have built the cage themselves out of consumer goods and daily schedules. The true meat grinder of the narrative begins when the family decides to exit the system. They don't scream, they don't cry, they systematically destroy their lives with the same cold, bureaucratic efficiency they used to live them. They shred their money, they smash their furniture, and they flush their belongings down the toilet. The vulnerability of the child in this film is almost unbearable to watch, as she is treated by her parents as just another variable to be balanced in their final equation. It is a film that stares directly into the industrial sadism of modern existence, proving that the silent machine doesn't need to hunt you, it just needs to wait for you to realize that you are already dead inside. Number 2. In the Realm of the Senses. Nagisa Ōshima's In the Realm of the Senses is one of the most controversial films in the history of world cinema, and its inclusion in this list is due to its radical exploration of dehumanization through obsession. Set in 1930s Japan against the backdrop of rising militarism, it tells the story of a man and a woman who retreat into a private room to engage in a non-stop cycle of sexual experimentation. While it is often discussed as an erotic film, its true nature is a psychological siege. It is about the total erasure of the outside world. The dehumanization here is sensory. As the two protagonists descend deeper into their private obsession, they stop being people and become functions of desire. They lose interest in food, in sleep, and in the war drums beating outside their door. They're trapped in a self-imposed, silent machine of the flesh. The film utilizes a clinical, unflinching camera that documents their physical degradation with the same cold detachment as a medical textbook. Their vulnerability is absolute because they have discarded every social and moral armor to reach a state of raw, primal existence. The volume of psychological intensity builds toward a climax of sacrificial destruction. As the boundary between pain and pleasure disappears, the man's body becomes a canvas for the woman's obsession. He is no longer a lover, he is an object to be consumed and, ultimately, mutilated. This is the endpoint of control. When two individuals attempt to escape a fascist system by creating their own system of absolute power over one another. It is a suffocating, visceral experience that proves the silent machine can exist even in the most intimate spaces. By the time the screen goes dark, you realize that their freedom was just another form of annihilation. Number 1. Salò, or the 120 Days of Sodom, 1975. Paolo Pasolini's Salò is not just a film, it is a brutal, philosophical autopsy of power. While often categorized as a horror or disturbing film, it is the absolute pinnacle of industrialized dehumanization. Set in a fascist-controlled pocket of Italy during the final days of WW2, it follows 4 wealthy libertines representing the judiciary, the clergy, the bank, and the state, who kidnap a group of young men and women and subject them to 120 days of ritualized bureaucratic torture in a secluded mansion. The anchor of this film is the total administration of the body. The libertines don't just inflict pain, they create a legal system within the house. They write laws that dictate when the prisoners can speak, how they must eat, and how they must use their own bodies. This is the silent machine at its most terrifying, because it is powered by absolute logic and absolute law. The vulnerability of the victims is agonizing to witness, because they are trapped in a clinical cage where their screams are met not with anger, but with the cold, bored indifference of an administrator checking a box. The volume of psychological and physical violation is staggering, but Pasolini's camera remains static and detached, like a silent observer in a laboratory. He refuses to give the audience the relief of cinematic drama. Instead, we see the meat grinder of fascism in real time, a system where the individual is reduced to raw material to be consumed and discarded. The final sequence, viewed through binoculars by the captors, is the ultimate metaphor for the voyeuristic state. It shows that to the machine, we are nothing more than distant, moving shapes in a landscape of control. Salò remains the most forbidden entry in cinema history because it forces us to confront the fact that the silent machine isn't a fantasy, it is a reflection of the darkest potential within our own social structures. It is the definitive number one because after watching it, the world never looks the same again. The films we've explored today are more than just obscure or cult cinema. They are warnings from a decade that saw the birth of the modern administrative state. The silent machine doesn't always need a physical prison. Sometimes it builds itself out of our schedules, our screens, and our silence. These directors use the medium of film to perform a surgery on the human condition, showing us the exact moment when the person ends and the asset begins. As we step out of these dark archives and back into the world of 2026, ask yourself, where do the walls of your own silent machine begin? Are you the observer, or are you the specimen? If you have the courage to dig deeper into the forbidden history of cinema, like this video and subscribe. We are only just beginning to uncover the blueprints of control. Drop a comment below. Which of these silent machines feels the most real to you in the world today?